I grew up in Denver, Colorado my whole life. At the time, my parents had just bought me an iPhone for my birthday. I was of course excited to finally have my own phone. They bought it for me so that I could communicate with friends and family. I would also use it to listen to music while I walked to and from school. I usually walked every day, as the school was only a few minutes away from our house. Everything was great until one day. I was walking home from school, messing around with my iPhone and listening to music, when, out of nowhere, two masked and hooded men jumped out at me. Before I could do anything, they charged at me and wrestled me to the ground. Then one of them held me down while the other tried to pry the phone out of my hands. I screamed for help, but there was no one around. I kept wailing for help as the two men got my phone and both ran away to a nearby getaway car. The next thing I knew, they were driving away with my phone. I was incredibly shaken up and immediately ran home to tell my parents. They called the police and made a report, but the police told them that there wasn't much they could do. There was sadly no surveillance footage in the area, and I couldn't give a very good description of the men since they were masked and hooded. I was completely devastated that I had lost my new iPhone. It didn't help that my parents were kind of hard on me. They didn't even buy me a new phone because they were afraid that I would get robbed again. I was pretty depressed about it. I felt like an outcast at school since everyone else had phones and they were always texting each other. A few days later, I told my two friends what had happened. They couldn't believe the situation either. That's when one of them suggested that we use the Find My iPhone feature to track the phone down. I was kind of skeptical and didn't think that we'd actually be able to find it, but I figured it was worth a shot. So, my friend pulled up the information on another device, and to my surprise, he was actually able to track down the phone. I couldn't believe it. It wasn't even far away either. The three of us walked to the location and found that the coordinates led to a house in a neighborhood close by. At first, I figured we should just call the cops and let them handle it, but they didn't even seem like they had cared about the situation before. We decided that we would come back to the house later that night and handle the situation ourselves. I wanted revenge, and we knew that we were the only ones who could get it. We went through a few different scenarios of what we could do. Finally, we decided on a plan. We would mask up and set the house on fire. We were all a little hesitant and scared, but we agreed that we had to do it. So, later that night, I waited for my parents to fall asleep. Then I snuck out of the house while wearing a mask and hood. I then met my friends at the nearby park. Then the three of us started walking toward the house with our supplies. We had all brought gasoline and other products to make sure that the house would burn. We didn't talk to each other much as we walked towards the house. We were all too nervous. We all knew that what we were doing was something dangerous, but it felt good to take matters into our own hands. When we got to the house, we got even more quiet. We slowly snuck towards it and began pouring the gasoline. Once we were done, there was only one thing left to do. Instantly, the house burst into flames. We all ran away as fast as we could before anyone could spot us. Then we each headed to our separate houses. When I got home, I snuck inside and went to my bedroom. My parents were still asleep. They had no idea what I had just done. I climbed into bed and tried to sleep it off, but my heart wouldn't stop pounding, and my anxiety was too high. I heard sirens drive by a few minutes later. I tried to ignore them and just focus on falling asleep. By the time the morning came, I was still awake. I had just laid in bed all night, scared that someone was going to come knocking at the door, but no one ever came. We had gotten away with it. I got out of bed and started getting ready for school like any other day. Then I checked the news. There was footage of the fire on TV. Apparently the house had burned down almost completely, killing a family of 5 that was inside. I went to school after that and saw my friends there. We all acted like nothing happened. None of us said a word about the night before. We just tried to put it behind us. But every night since, I couldn't fall asleep. I couldn't stop thinking about the footage of the fire that I had seen on TV and the family that had been inside. Months later, my friends and I were arrested for starting the fire. The cops had found security footage of us outside the house, and they were able to get the IP addresses of anyone that had searched the home's address on Google. We were all charged with arson and murder and sentenced to prison. What made it all the worse was that I found out that it wasn't even the people that robbed me. We had tracked down the iPhone to the wrong location. As I went through everything involved with the trial and sentencing, I couldn't help but think about how it had all been over an iPhone. All of that for just a phone. This story was inspired by a horrific incident regarding a 20-year-old Colorado male named Kevin Bui, who faces up to 60 years in prison for taking out an innocent family of 5 by setting fire to the wrong home. In a barbaric revenge plot over his stolen iPhone, Bui pleaded guilty to igniting the late-night blaze in a Denver neighborhood in August 2020, after using the Find My iPhone app to track his stolen phone to a general area. Bui, who was 16 at the time, was portrayed by the prosecutor as the ringleader of the 3 friends who plotted the inferno that incinerated the Senegalese family, which were all tragically taken away in the blaze. 3 other people broke bones while escaping by jumping from the 2nd floor of the home in the middle of the night. Surveillance video has captured Bui and his 2 friends wearing full face masks and dark hoodies when they set the fire to the home. Police fingered the trio as suspects after obtaining a search warrant and obtaining their IP address that had searched the home's address within 15 days of the fire. The suspects were arrested about 5 months after the blaze. All 3 were sentenced accordingly.
I've been working at Dollar Tree for a few years now. I work from the afternoon until close 5 days a week, so I barely have any time to go out with friends, even when I do have the time. The job is so soul-sucking that I don't have the energy. My coworker for 90% of my shifts is this other woman, Karen. She's not as bad as a stereotypical Karen, but I think she will be once she hits middle age. I'll just say that she and I don't have the greatest workplace chemistry. Most days, it's just me and Karen running the place, doing all the work while our boss just sits in his office doing piss all, if he's even there. One Sunday night, things started out as usual. It was an hour before closing. The boss had already taken off. Karen was running the register, and I was sweeping the aisles, trying to get a head start on our closing tasks. The store was nearly empty, just fluorescent lights and dingy white tiles, and the same shelves I have to stock every single day. That's when I heard a customer coming in. I continued sweeping the aisle, then moved on to the next. This one was in the middle of the store where I could see right to the entrance, and when I glanced down the aisle to see who had entered, I saw one of the most disturbing things ever. It was a man who looked insane, holding a huge machete at his side. Worse, he was staring right at me. He looked to be standing right by the register, but it didn't seem that Karen was there. I thought she must have gone to the bathroom. I was alone with this man. He may have been over 50 feet away, but there wasn't a single person or obstacle between us. I was terrified. I stopped sweeping, refusing to take my eyes off him before he looked away from me. But he didn't. He kept his gaze fixed directly on me. We stared at each other for almost a minute. Suddenly, he burst forward. He sprinted so fast that he closed nearly half the distance between us before I could even react. I dropped the broom and ran back to the office. The man was inches away from me as I got in and slammed the door shut. I put my entire body weight into the door, trying to keep him from getting in as I found the lock in the darkness and flipped it. Once it was locked, I stepped away. A moment later, the machete came right through the door. I screamed in panic, watching the machete hack through the cheaply made door like it was made of cardboard. I thought about what I could do to keep him from getting in. I then swept everything off my boss's desk and flipped it up on its side long ways, then jammed it up against the door. It was something I would have struggled with on any other occasion, but the adrenaline in my blood unlocked more strength than I ever thought I had. Seconds before I thought the door would surely be chopped to pieces, the hacking suddenly stopped. There was silence again. It was so quiet I could hear myself about to cry. Finally, I had the sense to take out my phone and dial 911.
Please. There's a man trying to kill me with a machete at the Dollar Tree. Please help me.
The 911 operator continued to ask me questions, but I soon couldn't hear any of it. All I could hear were the sounds coming from the other side of the store. I realized that the man had walked away from me because he had found himself another target, and she was screaming for her life.
Hurry! Please hurry! He's gonna kill her!
I broke down in tears, hiding in a dark corner of the office. The screams eventually stopped. I didn't know whether to go out and help or wait for the cops. I expected him to come back for me. I felt I was only waiting to meet the same fate as my coworker. Yet somehow, he never came. I didn't know if he was still there. I just stood there frozen in the room, puzzled by everything that was going on. After many minutes of terror in the office, some police officers finally knocked on what was left of the door and got me out. Unfortunately, as they escorted me out of the store, I saw what that man had done. I saw what was left of Karen. Her body was in pieces, mangled and torn up. It was an unthinkable destruction of what was once a decent human being. I collapsed in shock and vomited on the floor right then and there. The cops had to carry me out. They found the killer about an hour later. He was only a few blocks away. When they asked me if I had any connection to him, or if I knew if Karen did, I said no. I had never seen that man before. He just came into my place of work one day and decided he was going to take out the first person he saw. I don't get it. There was no motive at all. Just insanity. Just evil. The Dollar Tree didn't survive the bad press from the incident. My boss was forced to close the store not long after it happened. It didn't help that I quit the day of. I can't imagine ever stepping foot inside of a Dollar Tree ever again, much less spending an 8-hour shift in one. Just the sight of one makes my stomach turn. This story was inspired by a horrific incident regarding a woman who was hacked to death by a machete-wielding madman while working her job at a Dollar Tree, just less than 2 months after she married the love of her life. The newlywed, 22-year-old Ohio woman Karis Riebel was taken out Sunday at the dollar store in Upper Sandusky while working a shift on New Year's Day. Cops were called to the scene at 4:25 p.m. Shortly after, 27-year-old Bethel Beckley was said to have entered the establishment. Upon arriving, officers came across the grisly scene and found Riebel's remains on the store floor. Her attacker, however, was nowhere to be found. Within the hour, cops tracked down Beckley about a mile from the store and immediately arrested him. In a GoFundMe account set up to help Riebel's husband with funeral expenses, his aunt, Amber Geyser, revealed that the pair had been newlyweds. It's unclear if any relationship existed between the victim and the suspect. The Wyandotte County Major Crimes Unit is currently investigating the incident. The man has since been charged accordingly. I worked with my dad at Taco Bell. My cousin worked with us too, and together we basically ran the place. Our location got pretty busy during the day, and we got just as much traffic at night, if not more. At 10 p.m., we closed the inside and only did drive-thru orders. The drive-thru was very busy most nights, especially on the weekends. My cousin and I did the prep work and made the orders while my dad ran the register and took the orders. One night, I was cleaning up my station during some downtime when I heard my dad greeting a new customer. I got ready to make the order when it came up on the screen, but I couldn't help hearing the customer's voice through my dad's headset since my station was close to the window. My dad was a little hard of hearing, so he always had it turned up super high, but my hearing was sharp enough to just barely hear it when the kitchen was quiet enough.
Give me 4 tacos with extra sauce and 2 Cokes while you're at it.
There was something strange about that guy's voice. I couldn't tell what it was because I could barely hear it, but it just sounded off. It was unnaturally deep and disturbing. I tried to disregard it and started making the order of a few tacos. A few moments later, the customers pulled up. They were in a large black SUV with heavily tinted windows. I peeked around the corner as they rolled down the window and revealed their faces. 2 middle-aged men were in the car, and they both looked extremely strange. From their unsettling expressions to the way their faces were put together, it was all just really creepy. They looked oddly similar too, like they could have been brothers. I went back to making their food so they wouldn't catch me staring, but I kept listening to their conversation. At first, my dad treated them like any other customer, but hearing their voices in person was even creepier. Something about them just made my skin crawl. I did my best to keep it from causing me to make a mistake. Before long, I was almost done. But that's when things took a turn for the worst. Suddenly, I heard my dad yell at them that their $20 bill was fake.
It's fake! Your money is fake! Take the fake 20 and shove it up your ass! It's real, damn it! Just take the 20 and give me my damn tacos!
I looked around the corner and saw the worst case scenario. The deranged creep jumped out of his car and crawled halfway through the window holding a knife to my dad's face. My legs locked up. The driver was waving the knife around while my dad stood just far enough back not to be hurt. But I knew if the driver got any closer that things could go horribly wrong. The passenger was smiling at me through the window. He seemed amused that we were watching this catastrophe unfold together.
Just take the money! What's wrong with it? I told you it's fake! I can't take it! The money's as real as this knife! Which is gonna go right through your eyes if you don't take it!
Please stop! Dad, just take the money!
You should listen to the kid, old man. He's got more brains than you. No! Leave us alone or I'm calling the cops! That Monopoly money might work at 7-Eleven, but not Taco Bell, bitch!
My dad seemed completely unafraid, but with every passing second, that psycho looked more and more ready to snap. He'd gone from a creep to a demon in a matter of seconds, so I knew time was of the essence. I quickly dialed 911 and talked to the police while the situation continued to devolve before my eyes. Then, without warning, the psycho jumped through the window and did the unthinkable.
No, Dad, no. Please, stay with me. Stay with me.
I tried to save my father, but the only thing I could do was say goodbye to him in his final moments. He was gone within seconds. In that time, his killers did nothing except laugh as they took the rest of what they came for and drove off. Even if I hadn't been terrified of them, I was too devastated by the loss of my father to do anything but cry, as did my cousin when he came out of the bathroom. He had thought the yelling was just an angry customer, but he had no idea how bad things actually were. By the time help finally arrived, the men in the car were long gone, and since then, the investigation yielded no results. Despite the killer's face being captured on the security footage, he still hasn't been identified. What's worse, they had their license plate covered, so there was no way to track them that way either. For obvious reasons, my cousin and I have been unable to work there ever since, or at any Taco Bell for that matter. My family continues to grieve my father's loss. He leaves behind me, my mother, and my 2 younger siblings, who all relied on him. He tried to make a stand for what he thought was right for his livelihood, but it ended up costing him everything. The story was inspired by a horrific incident regarding a Taco Bell worker who was taken out by a customer after the restaurant had refused to accept a counterfeit $20 bill from the customer, who then opened fire. The 41-year-old male victim, named locally as Alejandro Garcia, was working with his son at the fast food chain restaurant in South Los Angeles when he was taken out around 11 p.m. Alejandro's son, who also works at the Taco Bell, had gotten into an argument with 2 men who had tried to pay with the fake bill while ordering drive-thru food in a black sedan. The argument at the drive-thru window escalated and one of the customers began opening fire. The attackers then sped off and remained at large. Garcia's son had attempted to close the window to provide cover, but it was unfortunately too late. No arrests have since been made in the case. Garcia worked at the restaurant part-time in order to provide extra money for his family. A statement from Taco Bell said, "We are shocked and saddened to hear that this happened. Our deepest condolences go out to the family and friends of Garcia in this difficult time." My family exclusively uses Apple products. Each of us owns a Mac and an iPhone, and most of us adults also have an Apple Watch. It all just runs better and works together more cohesively than any cobbled-together Android crap, and not to mention every single Apple product looks nicer than the competitor. We upgrade most of our products about every other year to make sure we always have the latest and greatest. Then we wipe our data from our old ones and sell them on eBay or Facebook Marketplace. A few months ago, my sister got the newest iPhone and wanted to sell her old one. Whenever we meet up with strangers, we always go together to make sure everyone stays safe. So I asked her to keep me updated with the details. There was a guy named Harvey who saw her ad on Facebook Marketplace and wanted to buy. They worked out the price and decided on a time and place to meet up that weekend. As usual, my sister made them meet us at a public place. This time it was in the parking lot in front of Medieval Times. However, I was concerned about the time. The buyer said they couldn't get out of work to meet us until 10 p.m., which was much later than any of us had ever met up to sell something. I found this a little sketchy, of course, but my mother said it shouldn't be a big deal, and ended up coming with us for an extra layer of protection. Medieval Times was a 30-minute drive from our house. When we arrived, The buyer was already there. Him and another man were standing in front of a car, but we couldn't tell if there was anyone else inside it. They had parked farther from the entrance than my sister told them to, and it was 10:30, so the parking lot was emptying quickly as people were going home from medieval times. There were already several things wrong with the situation, but my sister still wanted to go through with it. She said it would only take a few minutes. My mother got out of the car with her while I stayed in the driver's seat with the car running. I rolled my window down to hear their conversation. If I hadn't been sketched out by that Harvey guy enough already, the way he acted alarmed me even more. He kept his hands in his pockets and constantly looked around like he was afraid of anyone being near us. The other guy stayed by the car, looking past my mother and sister and straight at me. I knew these guys were bad news, but I tried not to let it be too obvious that I was freaked out. If I could just follow my mother and sister's lead, everything would go smoothly, and we could all go home safely. All I had to do was listen in, and only get involved if I thought something was going wrong. Come on, where's the phone? Don't keep me waiting.
I have it right here. Did you send me the money yet?
Alright, how much?
What do you mean? We agreed on 200.
No, we didn't! You said 50, bitch!
What the hell is your problem?
You made me drive all the way out here and now you're trying to scam me? Give me the damn iPhone! Now!
Then, out of nowhere, the buyer ripped the phone out of my sister's hands and ran into his vehicle. My mother then chased the man and jumped into the passenger side window, desperately trying to retrieve the iPhone back. That's when the driver of the car started driving in circles and drifting, trying to shake my mother off. But then, I heard the most horrific sound ever.
No, Mom!
I then ran after their car as they drove away, but it quickly became hopeless. I rushed to my mother's aid and did what I could to help stop the bleeding, but she passed out a few moments later. Onlookers in the parking lot called 911, but I knew we couldn't wait for an ambulance. My sister and I put my mother in the car and drove to the hospital faster than I've ever driven. We arrived at the emergency room just a few minutes after she was attacked, but when I took my mother out of the car to get her help, I could tell that the situation was dire, if there was any chance at all. Unfortunately, not long after she was taken in by the doctors, they pronounced her dead. She had lost too much blood too fast. Her heart had already stopped before we even got there. My sister and I buried her at the age of 42. It's been months since then, but I don't think this is a wound that can be healed by time. I think about her every day. I can't get the image of her life leaving her body out of my head. When I think about what she died for, it only makes it all seem even more cruel. They killed her over a stupid phone. I'm sure it was their plan to rob us from the start, but I can't believe anyone would do something like that over a couple $100s. Her killer has been arrested and goes to trial soon, but even that comes with the idea that the phone she died for is now sitting in an evidence locker somewhere. Every single iPhone I see now is just a stark reminder of what happened. I don't know how I'll ever be able to move on when I see one everywhere I go. This story was inspired by a horrific incident regarding a 24-year-old man who was convicted in the slaying of a woman during an iPhone robbery outside of medieval times. Lonsdale Hunter received an automatic life sentence without the possibility of parole after he was convicted for taking out 42-year-old Martha Turan. After he was sentenced, the state district judge told Hunter that if anyone asked her what his name was, she would spell out EVIL. The slaying happened in front of her adult children. In a frantic 911 call, the victim's daughter, Vivian, told the operator that the mother was taken out over a damn iPhone. Vivian testified during the trial that she agreed to meet the buyers, including Hunter, at medieval times. After arranging the sale of the iPhone 7 on the OfferUp app, she regularly met buyers in public places because she felt safer that way. Her brother and mother went to medieval times with her. Prosecutors portrayed Hunter as the mastermind behind the fatal robbery. In the weeks before the slaying, Hunter used a different name to set up an old account with OfferUp. Cell phone records and Facebook records show that he was the one who opened the account, and Hunter had also messaged friends about being ready to quote-unquote bleed this block for street money. According to court testimony, Hunter, along with Javon Jamal Bush, was also charged as he was the getaway driver. This happened in 2012 when I matched with this one girl from Tinder. After some text back and forth, we agreed to meet up at a restaurant downtown. I didn't have a car at the time, so I found myself taking public transit all the way there. When I arrived, my date and I ate, got to know each other, made some casual small talk, and then eventually agreed to go on a second date. The girl ended up taking an Uber home while I made my way to the nearest bus stop. I remember finding myself in the middle of the worst neighborhood in downtown St. Louis. Everything from fiends, gangbangers, dope slingers, and straight-up muggers were all over the place. When I got to the bus stop, there was only one guy there. He looked rough, like he just got out of his 7th 12-hour shift that week. He was wearing a torn-up backpack and some dirty clothes. But despite all that, the man looked hungry as hell. In his hands was a jumbo-sized bag of Cheetos that he was chomping on. I asked him if he knew when the next bus was coming. He said he just missed the last one, so it was going to be at least a half-hour wait. I settled in and stood next to the sign about 10 feet from him. Nothing about him bothered me at first, but as time went on, the way he was eating the Cheetos slowly started getting on my nerves. He'd grab a whole handful and stuff it into his mouth. Then he'd chew it all with his mouth wide open. The sound alone was disgusting. His mouth, hands, and teeth were completely orange. After every few handfuls, he'd suck all the powder off his fingers with the suction of a $5 hooker. Of course, there just can't be a normal person at a bus stop in St. Louis. Right as I was starting to find the situation funny, I saw this creepy dude looking at us from the corner of the block. The man stumbled over like only a fiend would. I knew he would come up and try to talk to us, but I held out hope that he would leave us alone. When he made his way towards us, he came up to me first. I nervously looked around, pretending not to notice him. The man then got right up in my face and stared me down for several seconds before speaking.
Hey, you got any change?
No, man, sorry.
Fine, keep your dollar. Just make sure to get on the bus and get the hell out of my neighborhood.
I backed off in fear. The guy was a straight-up menace. My blood was pumping, but I was glad he left me off the hook. He then went over to the guy with a giant bag of Cheetos.
Hey, let me have some of those. Hey, look at me. I said give me some of your Cheetos or I'm gonna take the bag out of your hand. No, you're not. You can have some Cheetos when you get a job and pay for some, you lazy bum. Oh, you think you're better than me? Give me those, bitch!
The creep then grabbed the bag of Cheetos and tried to rip them out of the man's hands. The man was able to hold on to it and shove the creep away. At first, they got into a shouting match. Then they started fighting. The pair started pushing and shoving. The creep kept lunging for the bag, but the Cheeto man juked him every time. I wanted to try and break it up, but I was honestly scared. I just stood there watching in awe. It was both scary and entertaining. I was watching a bum fight a guy over a bag of Cheetos, but I kept remembering the look in that psycho's eyes. It was like he was capable of anything. After a bit, the fight started to get serious, and it wasn't so funny anymore. I thought about calling the cops, but I looked around and saw a bunch of people filming it rather than calling 911, so I left my phone in my pocket. I couldn't help but get more scared watching it happen, though. I just kept feeling like it was going to end badly. And then I got proven horribly right. The attacker pulled out a knife and did the unthinkable.
You selfish son of a bitch! I just wanted some Cheetos! What the hell? Are you insane? Why? Why would you do that?
I couldn't believe my eyes. The guy had just stabbed that man over a handful of Cheetos. I was frozen stiff, and that insane freak grabbed the bag and started stuffing his face, all while crouching over the man's lifeless body. Why? Why?
Huh? You want some too, punk?
I finally snapped out of it and ran away as fast as I could. I didn't stop until I was in a whole different neighborhood. When I was in a safe enough distance, I called 911 and told them what happened. Unfortunately, it was too late. The man who just wanted to eat his Cheetos in peace died in the hospital. The man who killed him ran from the scene, and it took the cops a few hours to find him. Later on, I followed up on the case and found out that he had been sentenced to 23 years in prison. To this day, over a decade later, I still can't look at Cheetos without thinking about that man dying in front of me. The story was inspired by a tragic Cheetos incident regarding a food fight between two St. Louis men, which concluded with one of them dead and the other behind bars. 42-year-old Roger Wilkes passed away on Tuesday night after he was stabbed over a pack of Cheetos. Shocked witnesses described seeing the desperate scuffle break out over the cheesy treats, followed swiftly by a knife being pulled. Wilkes was taken to the hospital but didn't survive. 49-year-old David Scott has been named as the man behind the slaying. He fled the scene, but was later caught by police a few blocks away. Police at first said they believed the men to be homeless, but have since released addresses for them. Scott was later charged accordingly.
I've lived in Philadelphia my whole life, and I've always felt like it was my home. There was only one time when I considered leaving. After that day, it was hard for me to ever want to be in the city again. It happened not too long ago. It was a typical Sunday afternoon. I needed to pick up a few items for the week, so I decided to head over to the local Dollar Tree. Sunday was usually the best time to shop, so I knew that it wouldn't be too crowded. I didn't shop there too often, but it was the closest store, and I only needed a few things. When I got there, I was happy to find that the store was mostly empty. I walked in and grabbed a cart. Then I began to shop up and down the aisles. I needed various miscellaneous items, so I moved through most of the store trying to find everything that I needed. I had only been in the store for several minutes when out of the corner of my eye, I noticed a large man peeking out from the other end of the aisle shelf, smiling at me like a psycho. The guy was just standing there, staring at me. He looked like a freak. I assumed he had to have some sort of mental issue or something. I quickly headed over to the next aisle, hoping that I could get away from him. He seemed to watch me as I walked away. He still kept the same large smile on his face. I started looking around while I kept my eye on the other side of the aisle for the weirdo. That's when I saw the large man appear from behind the shelf once again. This time he was smiling even more psychotically. It really creeped me out. What's worse is that he was obviously looking right at me. There was no one else around. I didn't know what to do about it, as I couldn't really report him or anything. It wasn't like the man had actually done anything to me, but he still made me incredibly uncomfortable. I didn't know what he wanted with me. It was just weird, because he was borderline stalking. I once more went over to the next aisle, as the man remained standing there, smiling. His expression never changed the whole time that he stood there. I looked around the new aisle a bit, but there was nothing that I really needed. I was just trying to kill a minute or two, so that the man would hopefully walk away. All I wanted to do was leave immediately, as I was so weirded out by the man. I figured that he would eventually wander off, and I could get out without him watching me. After I waited a couple of minutes, I looked over to the next aisle and didn't see the man anywhere. I was relieved and figured that he had to have left. I was just about to head out to the front when, out of nowhere, I felt a sticky, nasty substance spray all over my leg.
Oh my god. What the hell?
That's when I turned around and saw the large psycho standing directly behind me. He was adjusting his shorts and took his hand out of them, and laughing like a total freak.
Do you want some more?
I immediately put two and two together. The guy was a sick pervert. I felt like I was going to vomit. He just stood there laughing while I continued to scream and pulled out my phone to record him. He then pushed past me and ran the hell out of the Dollar Tree. That's when I pulled out my phone and began chasing the freak, cussing and recording him while I tried to grab a hold of him. But he was too fast and was able to get away and sprint down the street. I began crying hysterically as I had gotten him on video. I still couldn't believe what had happened. I felt sick to my stomach. The guy was out of his mind. I eventually told the employees what had happened once I came to my senses a little more. They called the cops and reported the incident. The man was already long gone by the time they got there though. I gave the cops the video, and they said that they would do their best to find him, but they didn't seem hopeful. I cleaned the stuff off my leg as soon as I could. I almost threw up several times while I did so. It was the most disgusting and horrible thing that had ever happened to me. I ended up going home soon after. I headed to the washroom and cleaned myself from head to toe. I scrubbed as hard as I could on my leg, just trying to make the feeling of the disgusting substance go away. I still felt hysterical and scarred. I later posted the video online. It went viral and circulated all over the place. Somehow, it caught the attention of the famous rapper Meek Mill. He offered to give anyone money for finding the creep from the video. A few hours after Meek Mill offered the reward, it was revealed that the man had turned himself into the police. He was identified as a man named Gary Miles. No one knew if he had done anything like it before, or if I was his first victim. I was happy that the man was finally caught, but I still felt traumatized. I could never get the image of the man's smile out of my mind. I was afraid to go back to a Dollar Tree, or really any store again. I was too afraid that I would see that man again. Who knows what else he would do to me. This story was inspired by a creepy incident regarding a man police say was wanted in connection with an assault at a Dollar Tree. However, a few days after the incident, the suspect decided to turn himself in. According to police, the man pictured above, now identified as Gary A. Miles, 35 of Southwest Philly, was sought after they say an indecent assault of a female victim occurred at a Dollar Tree store on Sunday, June 23rd of this year. Store employees say that Miles is known to frequent the Snyder Plaza where they say he may park a vehicle. On Wednesday, a video went viral appearing to show the end of the assault. The horrific video caught the eye of Philly legend, Meek Mill. Meek took to Twitter, also known as X, saying that he was offering $2,000 for information on the suspect. Hours later, Philly police announced that Miles voluntarily surrendered to the authorities Wednesday evening. He was taken into custody and charged accordingly. A disturbing revelation from court documents show that Miles has been arrested over incidents dating back to 2011. The various charges include indecent exposure, open lewdness, disorderly conduct, and burglary. A few years ago, I went to Six Flags with my daughter and my boyfriend during the summertime. It's always been one of my daughter's favorite things to do. It was the thing we did every summer. We did the usual, everything Six Flags had to offer, like playing the games, going on rides together, and eating all the overpriced food we could stomach. There was only one thing I noticed about the day that was out of the ordinary. Normally, when the park is as packed as it was, it's very unlikely, if not impossible, to see the same face more than once. However, there was this one large middle-aged man who kept popping up everywhere. It seemed like every single ride we went on, he was just a few spaces behind us in the line. I thought about telling my boyfriend, but I decided against it. I didn't want to disturb him or my daughter and spoil their fun. Besides, if that creepy guy did end up trying anything, I knew my boyfriend would be there to put a stop to it. Unfortunately, I couldn't get it out of my mind. It was starting to creep me the hell out that the weirdo would pop up literally everywhere we went. I eventually suggested we go to a ride on the opposite side of the park. My family complained and protested a bit, but eventually just agreed to go with me. We hurried through the crowds of the park as Six Flags was packed as hell. When we reached our destination, I made sure to be the last one in line behind them just to make sure we weren't being followed. At first glance, it looked like we had finally lost him. I was relieved, thinking I managed to keep my family safe without them knowing we were potentially being stalked. But then out of nowhere, I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. I felt sick. I had every instinct to turn around even though I had just looked over my shoulder 15 seconds ago. I didn't want to believe it, but I couldn't doubt myself for very long. I turned around, and that's when I saw my worst nightmare. It was the same repulsive creep standing right behind me, taking pictures of my daughter.
Hey! Why are you taking pictures of my daughter?
I'm not! I was just taking a selfie!
Oh, bullshit! I've seen you following us around the whole park! I'm not blind, you idiot!
What are you talking about? I haven't seen you all day!
You're not worming your way out of this, you nasty creep! Give me your phone!
Hey, stop! Let go! It's mine!
Hand it over! You want to bite the damn curb?
Get off me!
Ugh! You're sick! I knew it! You can't find someone your own age, you disgusting piece of shit?
I don't like cakes, I like cupcakes!
You sick bastard!
Hey, dipshit! You're gonna delete every single photo you took of my daughter, and I'm going to watch to make sure you don't miss a single one. You got that?
No, they're my photos. I don't want to delete them.
So, you'd rather get sent to the hospital in front of all of these people?
I'm just trying to strike a chord because it's probably a minor!
If you don't delete those photos, I'm gonna stick this phone in your mouth and punch your double chin into your brain!
Okay, I'll do it.
By then, a crowd of people were watching the whole thing as the creep went through his phone and deleted all the photos he took. People in the crowd were cheering us on, telling us to beat him up. I sure wanted to, but if we'd handed him over to them, they might have torn him to shreds. Afterwards, the creep ran off with his tail between his legs. As for my family, our day was thoroughly ruined, so we went home. The car ride back was very tense, almost completely silent. Nobody wanted to talk about what happened, but we all knew it would be the last time we ever visited Six Flags. I couldn't sleep for the next few nights, and then I finally figured out why. We never made him clear out his trash folder, so it's more than likely that even after the entire scene, that sicko still has every single one of the pictures he took of my daughter. To this day, it eats at me, but I've never brought it up. The only saving grace to the situation is that the altercation was caught on camera and went viral. The internet dragged him relentlessly. Many people pointed out that we let him off easy. I'm inclined to agree, but knowing that the entire world has seen his face and knows what kind of monster he is, it does make it a little easier to sleep at night. This story was inspired by a creepy Six Flags incident regarding a video that was posted on social media that had gone viral about a mother who caught a man taking pictures of her child at Six Flags. The mother just so happened to see the man out of her peripheral vision before she confronted the man. When she confronted him, she asked to see his gallery, and when she did, she stated, "Why do you have pictures of my daughter on your phone?" A man on the side overheard the conversation and was telling people either he will go to jail or the man who was taking the pictures would. The mom ended up getting the man to delete these photos, and before the video ended, she can be seen cussing profanities at the man. It was unsure if the police got involved after the incident. One can only think, how many pictures could this guy have taken, and how many times could he have gone to that amusement park? The man has since remained unidentified despite the video going viral.
I used to work at this Taco Bell, which has to be a contender for the most disgusting fast food restaurant in the country. Half the food we serve people is on the verge of rotting. The bathrooms are absolutely atrocious because barely anyone ever cleans them, and 90% of our customers come down with explosive diarrhea. There are even rats in the kitchen crawling around in broad daylight. That's not even mentioning the people who work there. The majority of the employees didn't seem to care about doing their job properly. Everything is filthy, and our food is sloppy and prepared incorrectly more often than not. And most of my coworkers would rather hide in the back than work. The Taco Bell should have been shut down for health code violations 20 inspections ago. And the people who live in this town have no good reason to keep coming here when there's a perfectly okay McDonald's just down the road. The only explanation I can think of that anyone still comes here is that they've been banned from every other fast food joint for being insufferable dirtbags. After everything I've said about this place, it may seem like nobody should be forced to eat here, but these people deserve it. Never in my life have I experienced people act so rude and inconsiderate to each other. There was this one guy who definitely takes the cake in that regard. I don't want to say his name, but I'll just call him George. George is one of our regulars. He comes in at least 3 times a week, and every time I see him, I know there's going to be trouble. He's extremely argumentative and demanding, sometimes to the point of physical violence, but for some reason, the manager refuses to ban him, probably because we need his money. George's usual complaints are that the employees are disrespecting him and making his food wrong, and that the whole place is a dump. To be honest, I can see where he's coming from. I agree that most of the food is garbage and so is the customer service. He's totally right that our restaurant is literally a threat to human health, but there's no point in saying that to him. It seems he'll never stop coming here despite it. and the employees are never going to change their ways. Some of my favorite George moments include the time he claimed there was too much sauce on his burrito, only for him to pull out a tortilla that was literally half filled with mayonnaise. And the time he claimed we had given him rat meat on his taco as he pulled an entire ball of tangled up rat hair out of the shell. Nobody likes George, but there's one guy who works here who has serious beef with him. I'll just call him Alex. Alex likes to intentionally instigate fights with George. Whoever is dealing with the brunt of George's anger, which is often me, can count on being saved by Alex stepping in and making things a million times worse. If Alex knows the order is for George, he will intentionally screw it up just to make George pissed. It was entertaining at first, and my coworkers still get a kick out of it. But I'm starting to get scared of their interactions now. I've been worried for a while that one day, one of their fights will escalate into one of them killing each other. Even worse, maybe George will come in and kill us all. And last week, my worst fear was realized. George came in while I was working the register and Alex was in the kitchen making orders. I tried to be nice to George, but with Alex behind the counter, it was useless. As soon as I felt how light the bag was, I knew it was going to be wrong. Sure enough, George checked his order at the register and threw a fit.
Is this some kind of joke? I asked for 3 burritos, not 3 tacos full of rotten lettuce. You idiots keep serving me dog food.
Ugh! Don't throw food in my face.
I'm sure you're used to getting meat in your face. Now remake my food and give me a refund.
Excuse me, is there a problem here?
Yeah, this bitch won't give me a refund.
My apologies, sir. You ordered 3 burritos, right? We'll give you 4 on the house and we'll give you a refund. I was completely taken aback by the way Alex handled the situation. Normally I would have to walk away or get caught in the crossfire of a violent pissing contest, but that day was quite the opposite. Alex managed to defuse the whole thing in seconds. I was relieved, but also very confused. After I gave George his refund, I stepped into the kitchen to ask Alex what had just happened. I couldn't get the answer I wanted out of Alex, but by the time George's food came out, everything seemed alright. George was pleased with the burritos and decided to eat inside. He must have been hungry because he devoured all 4 pretty quickly. Then, he sat at the table on his phone for a while, digesting. Then, he suddenly fell out of his chair and started vomiting everywhere. It just kept coming out, more and more until he was covered in it. And then he started seizing. He was convulsing in a pool of his own puke while he continued to purge everything in his stomach. When he finally stopped vomiting, he appeared to be frozen in a convulsion until the ambulance came to take him away. It was later reported that he had a nearly lethal amount of rat poison in his system from the burritos he ate. Naturally, the restaurant was shut down, and now I'm out of a job as Taco Bell scrambles to cover this whole thing up. I know what happened though, and I know who did it. I have no interest in snitching. George deserved it. The story was inspired by a disturbing incident regarding a Colorado man who claimed Taco Bell workers poisoned his food. Allegedly, there was a report of a disturbance in the drive-thru of a Taco Bell in Aurora, Colorado around 1 p.m. Sunday. A male customer allegedly got into an argument with a Taco Bell employee because the restaurant's soda machine wasn't working. Restaurant manager said the man is a regular customer with a history of causing problems, including allegedly throwing a taco at an employee in the past. The manager also said he wanted something free and was given a 4th burrito at no cost with his order of 3 bean burritos after complaining. Police say the unidentified man ate the food later Sunday night around 7 p.m. and soon became violently ill. He called 911 and was taken to a hospital. The hospital confirmed there was indeed rat poison in the burrito. The case is categorized as criminal attempt homicide. The restaurant was closed for investigation Sunday night, and surveillance video was turned over to the Arapahoe County Sheriff's Office. There have been reports that the restaurant has since reopened after inspection and are still cooperating with the investigation. A few years ago, I was living with my 2 kids in a little house close to the city. It wasn't easy back then. I was a single mom and always working, so it made it difficult to spend any time with them. Whenever we did do something, it usually had to be in the early mornings or later at night, unless it was on the weekends. We got by though, and we still had fun together, but I'll never forget the day that I thought all that was going to end. It all happened this one summer. Late one night, I was watching TV with my kids and eating Cheetos. That's usually what we did when I had been at work all day. It was always nice to be able to sit with them for a while before we went to bed, and they couldn't get enough Cheetos, so it was a treat for them too. After we had been there for a while, the kids eventually fell asleep on the couch next to me. I checked the time and realized it had gotten pretty late, so I woke them up and walked them upstairs to the bathroom so they could brush their teeth. Then I tucked them in and put them to sleep. As I was tucking them in, I heard weird noises coming from downstairs. I immediately started freaking out, but I tried not to show it while I finished putting my kids to sleep. I didn't want them to think anything was wrong. Once they were down, I slowly walked out of their room and listened quietly, and that's when I heard the noises again. There was definitely something moving around downstairs. I was scared shitless. I knew I had to check it out, but the idea of going down there by myself was terrifying. The noises continued though, so I slowly began to make my way down the stairs. It was pitch black in the house. My heart was pounding. I hoped I was just hearing things. After I got downstairs, I crept towards the living room and looked around. That's when I saw that the window was pried open. I was scared out of my mind. I began to think that someone was in my house, but as I looked around the living room, I didn't see anything out of the ordinary. I figured if someone broke in, they would have gone for the TV first, but nothing had been moved that I could tell. I started thinking I might have just left the window open. Then I heard the noises again. This time, I could tell they were coming from the kitchen. My heart started pounding faster and faster as I turned around and slowly crept towards the noises. Then, as I stepped into the kitchen, I saw something terrifying. There was a creepy-ass woman crouched in my kitchen, eating Cheetos in the darkness. As I screamed, the woman just sat there chomping and slurping on the Cheetos. I was scared shitless, debating if I should confront the woman or just run away. That's when I said,
"Who are you? What the hell are you doing in my house?"
The deranged woman ignored me and continued to eat the Cheetos while she giggled like a psychotic freak. It was so creepy. She had to be some kind of lunatic.
"Get out of my house!"
I kept screaming at her, but it didn't do any good. The woman wouldn't move. She just kept eating the Cheetos. Then, out of nowhere, she suddenly charged at me with the scariest face I'd ever seen. All I could see were her cheesy teeth grinning at me while she laughed like a lunatic. I ran upstairs as fast as I could while she chased after me, cackling.
"Say cheese! These Cheetos taste just like my ex-husband's Tootsie Roll!"
I managed to get in my kids' room and slammed the door shut just before the woman grabbed me. Then, I pulled my phone out and called the cops. I could hear her talking to me from the other side of the door.
"Come on! I just wanted to talk! Open the door! I need some dental floss and Colgate! Right now! Before I get cavities, bitch!"
My kids woke up from all the noise, scared as hell. They tried to scream, but I forced them to be quiet. I didn't want the woman to know they were with me. I made them come over by me and we all stood there in the darkness, waiting for the woman to hopefully go away. It was the scariest experience of my life. We could hear her scraping and scratching at the door while we stood there. The whole while, she kept chuckling and giggling to herself like a psycho. Eventually, the woman left the door, and I heard more commotion coming from downstairs. She had to have gone back into the kitchen, but I was still shitting bricks. I knew it was only a matter of time before she came back upstairs. After what seemed like forever, the cops finally arrived. When they got there was no sign of the woman. All they found was an empty bag of Cheetos and half a bottle of water on the kitchen floor. I explained what happened, and they searched the whole house to make sure she was really gone. They didn't find the woman, but they did find what appeared to be bite marks and Cheeto residue on the door to my kids' room. It was like the woman had tried to bite her way inside. They eventually found the woman not too far from the house. She was wandering around the streets in the dark, still laughing to herself. The cops arrested her for breaking into my house. They were able to use the Cheeto residue on her teeth as evidence. She was charged and eventually put in jail. I still don't know why the woman was in my house. She would never give an answer to the cops. To this day, I can't stand the sight of Cheetos. I'm traumatized by anything to do with them. All I can hear is that woman laughing in my head while she screamed.
"Say cheese!"
This story was inspired by a bizarre Cheetos incident. Tulsa police said a woman is in jail after Cheeto residue on her teeth linked her to an attempted home burglary. Police said on February 26, patrol officers were dispatched to reports of a person attempting to force their way through the window of a home. The victim was alone in the residence with her two small children. She told 911 that a person was breaking in through a window. Officers arrived quickly and found an open window with the screen removed on the front of the house. A few seconds later, they saw a woman named Sharon Carr come out of the shadows and arrested her. Police said Carr allegedly pried the screen off and opened a window using a board. She then entered the home through the window, but left before stealing anything or harming the residents. Officers suspect she was spooked when she heard the residents in the house. Officers said they found an empty Cheetos bag and a bottle of water on the floor near the open window. Officers believe Carr dropped the Cheeto bag in water as she made her escape out the window. The victim identified Carr as the burglar after seeing her. Carr was further linked to the crime by Cheeto residue in her teeth. Carr was arrested on a first-degree burglary complaint. She offered no reason for committing the crime, police said. I'm a manager at Dollar Tree. My daughter used to work with me when she was in high school, but when she moved out, she ended up working at a Dollar Tree location on the other side of town, closer to where she lived. I missed working with her, but I didn't mind my employees. The only one I had issues with was this guy named Thomas. He was already working there when I moved up to manager, so I wasn't the one who hired him. I didn't get how someone could either. The guy was a psycho. He always acted strange around the other employees, and had a terrible track record for showing up on time. In fact, he had a terrible track record for every single part of his job. He showed up late dozens of times, leading to the store not opening on time on several occasions. He was extremely rude to me, the customers, the coworkers, and even had several write-ups for blowing up in people's faces. I once caught him stealing money from his register, finally causing me to fire him on the spot and send him home. All I remember was seeing the guy lose his shit, and then him leaving. And since then, I haven't seen or heard from him. That was until I heard from my daughter. She told me that he started showing up at her Dollar Tree location to harass her. Things started off bad and only got worse. At first, he just played a stupid game of buying something and then coming back the next day to try and return it. My daughter went along with it the first few times, but started refusing when she caught on to what he was doing. Being told no only made the psycho intensify the harassment. He always got in her line and would stare at her the entire time he waited to get to the register, intentionally creeping her out while she was trying to do her job. When he got face to face with her, he repeatedly insisted that she should sleep with him. When she refused, he got angry and threatened to kidnap her, forcing her to raise her voice and kick him out of the store. My daughter dealt with this on a near daily basis. Every single time she went to work, she called me every night to tell me what he did that particular day. It annoyed the hell out of me to see her going through this. I knew the dirtbag was using my family to get back at me for firing him. Eventually, my daughter threatened to call the cops enough times that her boss had caused to ban him from the store. I wanted to celebrate, but I knew deep down that it wasn't the end. If anything, I was worried it would make things even worse. The very next day, Thomas came into my store with a smug smile on his face. He started teasing me, telling me all the disgusting things he was going to do to my daughter, trying to poke all my buttons. I didn't let it get to me. I refused to give him the satisfaction. He kept telling me he was going to pay my daughter a visit later that day. I didn't know if he was trolling or being for real, but I didn't want to take the risk. After he lingered for a bit, he left. That's when I texted my daughter that Thomas was on the way. Afterward, I couldn't focus on work. I had an awful nagging feeling in my gut. I was so distracted that I had to step into my office. Finally, I decided I needed to take a break and go there myself. I left the store and drove to the other one. I let my daughter know I was coming, but I didn't get a reply, which only made me more concerned. I made it to the parking lot a few minutes later. The moment I stepped out of my car, I heard loud sounds coming from inside the store. I froze in shock. I had expected a scene, but not this. By the time the sounds finally stopped, I already knew my world had been shattered. A moment later, Thomas ran outside. He spotted me and started running straight for me.
Damn it! I had another clip, you'd be a goner too!
He tackled me to the ground and tried strangling me. I tried fighting him off, but my arms felt like they were made of lead. It almost felt like there was no point in fighting at all. If my baby was gone, then I didn't care about anything. But for some reason, God said it wasn't my time. A man in the parking lot shouted and started running toward us. Thomas then gave up and started running off just before the man could grab him. Instead of going after Thomas, he stayed with me to see if I was alright, but I didn't give a shit about myself. The only thing I cared about was my daughter. The cops and the ambulance came a few minutes later, but by then, it was too late for her. Thomas had made sure there was no chance. He was caught later that day and arrested at his residence. If he rots in prison getting tortured by inmates every single day, it'll never be enough. They could fry him, torture him, skin him alive, but it wouldn't be enough. I've never been the same person since all this happened. The only thing I have left are my sons, but now I don't even feel like I'm a good enough mother to protect them. The story was inspired by a horrific incident regarding a 25-year-old Dollar Tree employee. The victim's name was Jasmine Bennett, who was filling in for someone else's shift. Police have arrested a 21-year-old former employee of the store named Jalen Thomas, who police believe had been fired from the Dollar Tree for allegedly stealing in March. Allegedly, Thomas walked inside the store and without warning, took out an employee on the job, which happened to be Jasmine. Police said multiple employees helped identify Jalen Thomas as the killer. Thomas was arrested at his home shortly after the incident. According to court records, Thomas confessed to the ordeal and admitted he was upset with Jasmine after she refused to exchange some merchandise for him a few weeks prior. It was also revealed that Thomas had also been upset with the victim's mother, who was a manager at another Dollar Tree store. Thomas had a verbal altercation with the mother after she had promised him work hours, but then rescinded the offer. Regardless of the motive, Jasmine's family knows she didn't do anything to justify her life being taken away at such a young age. The family is planning to have a candlelight vigil outside the store on Friday night.
When I was 19, my dad had recently remarried. His new wife and her daughter, who was only a few years younger than me, moved into our house. I hated them both. I couldn't stand them. I always thought my stepmom was loud and ugly, and that my stepsister was annoying as hell. Every time I voiced my complaints about them to my dad, he would get angry and force me to get along with them. But over time, I would be cordial whenever they were around. However, my dad didn't think I was trying hard enough though. He thought that because we never went out and did anything together, we weren't really a family. That's when he dragged us all out to Six Flags one summer, on a ridiculously hot day so we could spend some time together. I remember the place being packed as hell when we got there. We walked around doing everything Six Flags had to offer. My stepsister was a pretty good sport and participated in everything, while my stepmom was the worst and kind of didn't do anything but watch most of the time. That being said, we managed to win a few prizes. We tried to hit all the roller coasters too, but my stepmom wouldn't ride any of them. She was too afraid that it would be dangerous for her because of her weight. She was pretty big, but I saw plenty of much fatter people going on the rides. No matter how many times we egged her on to join us, she stood her ground, eventually meeting us at the exit of each ride. I honestly found her to be a buzzkill because she didn't want to participate in anything at all. Towards the end of the day, my dad's stepsister and we made a decision to work together to get her to ride at least one roller coaster before the night was over. After what felt like endless persuasion, she finally agreed to it. That's when we picked the biggest roller coaster Six Flags had to offer, the Texas Giant. She looked scared as shit, but it was way too late to back out. At that time, it was my dad who stayed behind and held on to all the stuff as we waited in line. Then, as we approached the front gate and were the next ones to be seated, the bitch tried to back out.
I think I want out. I can't do it.
Oh my god, shut up. We've been waiting here forever. We're almost there. Now you want to wimp out?
I'm sorry, but I can't. I'm too big. I won't fit.
You'll fit, damn it! If anything, it'll be an even more snug fit. So get on the ride. I'm sure you're used to riding things.
You're such a jerk. It's fine. I'll just get it over with.
It took some heavy convincing to get her not to bail, but when it was our time to get seated, she wanted to ride with her daughter, but because of her size, the employees put her in the carriage behind us by herself. That just made her freak out even more, but it was too late. Almost as soon as the ride started moving, my stepmom started screaming and hyperventilating. She was convinced that something was wrong, and there was nobody sitting next to her to console her. My stepsister and I laughed it off. It was the payoff for spending the whole day convincing her to step out of her comfort zone, and it was honestly the first thing we ever really bonded over. The ride slowly ascended to the first big drop. My stepmom's pleading screams got louder and louder. A few other people on the ride with us even told her to shut up, but my stepsister and I were just dying with laughter.
Please, stop the ride! My seatbelt isn't on right! It won't buckle! Stop the ride! Please! Stop the ride now!
When we finally reached the top, the roller coaster finally shot down the first drop. That's when my stepmom wailed and cried like a banshee as everyone else cheered. We were having fun for a few seconds, and then as we dropped down from the next peak, I saw something I'll never forget. I saw my stepmom flying through the air.
Please! Somebody help her! Somebody call the cops! Help! Please call 911! Anybody! Please! Please! Please!
There was no way to save my stepmom from the injuries she suffered in the accident that night. Ever since that day, nothing has been the same. Nobody in the family speaks to one another anymore. I can't sleep. I can barely eat. I feel so much terrible guilt about what I did. If I hadn't been so harsh with her, if I hadn't forced her to get on that stupid ride, she would still be alive. We may not have been close, but my dad loved her, and she was my stepsister's mother. I took that away from them. Even if they learn to forgive me, I don't think I ever will. This story was inspired by a horrific incident regarding a woman who fatally plunged from a height of 75 feet while on a roller coaster ride. The incident sparked terror across the world when it was reported that the victim, Rosa Ayala Goana Esparza, had died after falling from the Texas Giant roller coaster at the Six Flags amusement park in Texas. It was reportedly the first time the woman was visiting the theme park. The 52-year-old went on board the 14-story high roller coaster, sitting in the second car by herself, with her daughter and son-in-law in the seats in front of her. What followed after the ride started would traumatize the family forever. According to the police report, early in the ride, her daughter turned around and looked at her mother. She saw her almost completely upside down with her head near the floor and her feet almost straight up in the air. As the ride began its third ascent, Esparza's daughter saw her mother being tossed out of the car. It reportedly took firefighters an hour to find her body, and when they did, it was nearly severed on the roof of the Honky Tonk Tunnel, which covers a lower track of the ride. Her remains were scattered on the tunnel roof and on the ground over about a 75-foot area below Esparza's body. A witness said she watched the woman falling from the ride and gave a testimony saying, "She goes up like this, raising her hand up in the air. Then when it drops to come down, that's when it released and she just tumbled." John Putman, Carla's husband, claimed that he didn't witness the fall, but said the victim's son-in-law was clearly distraught when the ride returned to the loading platform. Esparza's family settled a lawsuit against Six Flags, as well as the German ride maker with an undisclosed amount. Six Flags said in a statement at the time that all sides had reached an agreement. Throughout the year, I would FaceTime my daughters and granddaughters since I lived far away from them. I lived alone and have been pretty lonely since my daughters moved out with their respective families. But during the summer, my daughters would leave their kids with me for a few weeks, just so they can do their own things with their respective husbands. I didn't mind it since I really enjoyed spending quality time with the girls. Plus, it kept me good company rather than being alone all the time. For the sake of the story, I want to keep the names of my grandkids anonymous, so we'll call the older one the bottom bunker and the younger one the top bunker. For context, the girls would sleep on a bunk bed in my guest room, which is why I'll refer to them as such. Over the years, they started not getting along and would fight over everything. They don't play like they used to anymore either. They're more interested in my iPhone since their parents didn't buy them one. I would let them both share it when I wasn't busy making a call or whatever. I barely used it unless I was FaceTiming my daughters or grandkids, so seeing as they were already here, I let them use it for most of the day. My grandkids would do a million things with it, like play games and use the internet. Unfortunately, they weren't good with sharing it. The other night, I was trying to fall asleep when I heard bickering down the hallway. It sounded like they were going at it pretty hard as usual.
Give it to me! It's my turn! I just got it back 5 minutes ago, idiot! What are you doing? Watching the house? You dumb bitch! I'm gonna make you eat your words!
That's when I got up out of the bed and went down the hall to their room. I listened to what they were saying for a few moments just to confirm what I already knew before I opened the door and caught them. Just as I suspected, they were tussling over the iPhone. I then cussed the pair off and tried talking some sense into them.
Knock it off! I'm tired of hearing you two pissing and moaning and having a damn menstrual cycle about the damn iPhone! My goodness, I can't take these Apple products! If I gotta get up and tell you both to get it together one more time, you can kiss it goodbye and play with some real apples! Now go to sleep! It's late!
That threat seemed to work, so I went back to bed. Things were quiet after that. I thought I had put an end to the situation. I had imagined that they had managed to work it out in angry whispers, or the one who didn't get what they wanted had gone to sleep early so they could snatch it in the morning before the other one woke up. I fell asleep expecting to see them quietly bickering with each other in the morning, but I could have never expected what had happened that night. The next morning, I woke up to check on the girls. When I got to the room, the bottom bunker was sitting up in her bed texting on the iPhone. I told her to get ready for breakfast, and then she got up to use the bathroom. I called up to the top bunker, but she didn't answer. I yelled a few more times and threatened her not to sleep in all day, but nothing I said made her respond. Finally, I got fed up and went up the ladder a few steps to shake her awake. I shook her and shook her, but she wasn't moving. I rolled her over and took the blanket off of her to shake her up some more, but as I was shaking her, I remember seeing the most disturbing thing ever. I remember seeing her eyes shift open with her pupils rolled to the back of her head. There was no life left in her eyes. All I could do was scream in horror, nearly falling off the bed. I barged in on the bottom bunker and ripped the iPhone out of her hands to call 911. While the police were on their way, I thought to check the nanny cam that has been in their room since they were little. When I saw it, the video was horrifying. What my grandchild did to her own cousin was disturbing as hell. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. After they had gone to bed, she took her pillow and climbed up the ladder, sneaking up on her younger cousin. Then she jumped up on her and smothered her until she stopped moving. She then moved the body to make sure it looked like she was asleep. Then she climbed back down and immediately got on the iPhone after getting back in bed. While the lifeless body was just inches above her, I was devastated, and so were my daughters. None of us could have ever expected anything like this to occur. Even the police were in disbelief. They took my first grandchild away, and now they want to charge her as an adult for the disturbing slaying. Nothing like this should have ever happened to my family, especially over something as senseless as an iPhone. This story was inspired by a disturbing incident regarding a female victim who was allegedly suffocated by her cousin after the pair got into a dispute over an iPhone while at their grandmother's house. The unidentified culprit allegedly used the bedding to suffocate her cousin before cleaning up and repositioning her body. Police have obtained a video of the act, which they say shows the culprit committing the act while the victim was sleeping in the top bunk. Police say the victim and the culprit were staying with their grandmother for the summer, and the tragedy occurred after the pair were arguing over the iPhone. The suspect was charged with the slaying along with tampering with evidence. A GoFundMe page and funeral was since held for the victim. I live alone in a fairly spread out suburb. I'm retired, so I can only afford a small house paid for by my retirement savings and social security checks. My wife divorced me 20 years ago, and I never remarried. All our children have grown up and moved on. At 64 years old, I haven't done much in the 2 years since I retired. I can't afford to travel, and I don't feel like going out of my way to see old friends. Mostly, I just watch TV until it's time for bed. The only time I leave my house is to get groceries. There's a nice area of woods in front of my house, but there aren't any trails through it, so it's only good for looking at. I just spend most of my time eating Cheetos and basking in the view. In my old age, I have developed a strong taste for Cheetos. All of my life I avoided them. I never once ate them when I was younger, but in a spur-of-a-moment decision, I bought a small bag at the gas station and never looked back. I make sure my house is stocked with Cheetos so I can eat them whenever I want. I think I must be making up for all the Cheetos I never ate. One night, I was in my recliner, munching on a bag of Cheetos as usual, watching one of my favorite movies. I had all the lights off at the time. About halfway through the movie, I paused it to grab another bag. While I was in the kitchen, I heard a strange noise outside. It sounded like coyotes yelping or maybe a person cackling. I went to the door to check it out. At least from the peephole, I couldn't see anything. I made sure the door was locked and I let it go. Then I went back to the movie with my bag of Cheetos. A few minutes later, I heard the sound again. It was louder than before, and I was pretty sure it was coming from a person. I got up and checked through the peephole again, and this time, there was something out there, right across from my house at the edge of the woods. There was some figure I couldn't identify. It looked like it could be a person, but also maybe a large animal. It was too far away from the streetlights to be sure. I was able to decipher that they were standing on two legs, so I figured it had to be a person in some cheap animal costume. I was creeped out that they were just standing there laughing. I knew it had to be somebody completely out of their mind. But who in the hell would just stand in the woods at night and stare at houses while wearing an animal costume? I watched them for several minutes while eating my Cheetos nervously. The figure never moved. After a while, the chills had worn off and I was starting to get bored. So I locked the door and went back to the TV to keep watching my movie. Shortly after I sat down, I heard the floorboards on my front porch creaking, like somebody was sneaking up onto it. I rushed over to the door and checked the peephole, and there was the last thing I wanted to see. There was literally a man in a cheetah costume standing right at my door. I immediately backed away in shock. A moment later, the man knocked.
What do you want?
Open the door. I just want to talk.
You can talk just fine out there.
It would really be best if we did this face to face.
Maybe I'm too old-fashioned, or maybe I was just too curious, but I opened the door for him.
Who are you?
I'm just a cheetah. You mean you don't see the resemblance?
Huh?
Actually, I was wondering if I could have some of those. I smelled them a mile away and followed the scent all the way to here.
What? That's ridiculous.
No, it's not. I'm just a cheetah. I'm extremely good at tracking my prey. I have a good nose for smelling something dangerously cheesy. I hope you wiped properly and scrubbed those nuts. I wouldn't want to get the scent mistaken for something else.
Hey, how about I give you a couple of bucks and you can get a bag of Cheetos for yourself? This is my last one.
You're lying. I can smell the inside of your house, you lying bitch.
Please, just calm down, sir.
Just give me those Cheetos now!
Ah! Hey, those are mine!
Give me more!
I don't have any more! Look, you can have money, just go away!
I don't want your money, I want your Cheetos!
Ah! Oh, my hip!
That was your last bag, huh? You're a dirty, lying hoarder!
Help! Somebody help me! I need a hospital!
Shut up, you wrinkly ball sack!
This story was inspired by a horrific incident regarding a homicide that happened in October of 2019. Deputies responded to the Whispering Sands neighborhood and found 64-year-old Elijah Coleman unresponsive on the front patio of his home. During the course of their investigation, they located a Cheetos bag inside the victim's residence. They said that they were unable to identify a fingerprint on the bag. Detectives were able to determine that it belongs to 34-year-old Orenzo Fitzpatrick Jr. Investigators interviewed the man who gave conflicting statements in regards to where he was at the time of the homicide. Fitzpatrick Jr. was reportedly arrested on one count of homicide. He is being held at the Marion County Jail with no bond. One summer when I was a teenager, my family went to Six Flags. My parents let me bring my best friend Alan. He had been over to our house hundreds of times, so my family got along with him. After we all got into the park with our passes, Alan and I were cut loose and allowed to do whatever we wanted, while my younger siblings were stuck with our parents. We were supposed to meet up by the front of the park 30 minutes before they closed, and of course, come right away if we received a call. With a few bucks in our pockets, we tried a few carnival games and spent a little while in the arcade. But when the money ran out, we started hitting the roller coasters. They were all fun despite the long wait times at each one. It wasn't so bad though, as the lines were fairly short. Eventually, it started to get late, and there was only one ride left, the Batman. We'd been saving it for the very last. At the time, a new Batman movie was coming out soon, so the hype around the Batman was insane. We thought this would make the ride even cooler than ever, but in reality, it just meant the Batman was the most sought-after experience at Six Flags, which caused the line to be outrageous. There were more people in the line for the Batman that we had seen at any other ride all day long, and it moved at a snail's pace the entire time. It was an extremely stressful crawl for me and Alan. We were worried that we wouldn't even get to the end of the line before we had to go meet my parents. The frustration only grew as time went on, and the line only seemed to move slower and slower the closer we got to actually getting on the ride. Finally, after nearly 3 grueling hours, it was our turn. Even after all these years, I remember every twist and turn of that ride. It was honestly one of the most fun roller coasters I was ever on. Not many were able to make me feel so close to the edge like the Batman. It buzzed so close to the ground that I really thought my feet were going to scrape it. I was worried my ankles would get broken the whole time. As exhilarating as it was over in a flash. Before we knew it, this ride that we had been waiting to get on for 3 hours was already done. It was very disappointing. We only had about an hour and a half before we had to meet up with my parents, so the day was pretty much done. We considered getting back in line in the hopes that it would magically be 10 times shorter, and we could squeeze in one more ride. But when we came around to do so, it was obviously hopeless. Even the people in line were unsure if they would get a chance to ride before the park closed. I was ready to call it quits, but Alan thought he had a trick up his sleeve. As we were walking away from the ride, we passed by a fence at the back end of the ride. From there, we could see the platform where people got on. Alan suddenly had the idea to hop the fence, run underneath the ride, and sneak back into the end of the line. I tried to convince him it was a bad idea, that even if we did manage to hop the fence without getting caught, someone would surely notice us cutting. Unfortunately, Alan had made his mind up. He tried to get me to go with him, but I wasn't okay with risking it. We ended up getting into an argument, and despite my best efforts to get Alan to give up and go home, he started climbing the fence.
Alan, stop! What are you doing? What's it look like, chicken shit? I'm getting back on. But if you want to be a wimp, you can stay behind. I'll wave to you as I fly by. That's crazy! Stop it! Come back here!
Alan ran off into the ground beneath the ride, looking back to make fun of me as he snuck around the pillars, trying to get back to the platform. Just a few seconds after he jumped the fence, I heard a familiar sound. There was a carriage climbing up the incline, getting ready to swoop down at any moment. I yelled at Alan to watch out, but by then, all our fighting had drawn a small crowd who was watching Alan in the restricted area. Several people were trying to tell him to come back, but he had tuned all of us out. He was on a mission to ride the Batman one more time, and nothing was going to distract him from his goal. But then, the carriage sped down the incline, beginning its journey of twists and turns at high speed. I called out to Alan one last time.
Alan, watch out! Get out of the way! Hurry up right now! Alan!
The roller coaster struck Alan just as he ran underneath its closest point to the ground. The metal structure of the carriage decapitated him instantly. One moment he was there, and the next, he was gone. The ride was shut down and the park closed early so Alan's remains could be recovered. My mother didn't even believe me at first. She thought we were playing some kind of joke on her. But then she saw Alan's body and broke down in tears. Over the years, I've slowly been able to recover from the loss of my best friend. But to this day, I still feel numb when I think about it. I can never look at Six Flags the same way again. This story was inspired by a horrific incident regarding a popular ride at Six Flags. Police say a South Carolina man named Asia LaShawn Ferguson was taken out when he was hit by the Batman roller coaster. The park closed the ride over the weekend out of respect for the family. Police are still investigating why Ferguson was in the restricted area. Investigators say LaShawn and a friend jumped 2 6-foot fences near the Batman roller coaster. Investigators say LaShawn got too close to the ride and was taken out. It's still not clear why LaShawn jumped the fence. According to a statement from the park, some witnesses say LaShawn was trying to retrieve his hat. A spokesperson from the park said the restricted area LaShawn was in was clearly marked with several "Do Not Enter" and "Danger Zone" signs. No other guests on the ride were injured in the incident. It all happened not too long ago. I lived in a boarding house with my 2 other roommates, Mark and Dale. Mark and I were in our 50s, and Dale was pushing 75. It wasn't a great situation, but it was all any of us could afford. None of us were in a very good financial position. The house we lived in was kind of a dump. It was small and falling apart in some places, but we didn't have any money to try and fix the place up. I just tried to get through the day with the little money I had. Usually, we would eat fast food for most meals since it was affordable. Most of the time it was from Taco Bell, as that was the local fast food joint nearby. When we first moved in together, the situation was a little better. We were all pretty good friends, and we were able to get along well. It was a good thing, because we had to share a small space between the 3 of us, and we all had to cram what little food we bought into the same tiny kitchen and fridge. We would never eat each other's food though. We all made sure to keep our stuff separated in the kitchen as much as possible. Then one day, things started to go downhill. Dale and I were sitting in the living room when Mark suddenly came barging in and started yelling at us about his missing Taco Bell he had left in the fridge.
Which one of you shitheads stole my food?
Dale and I both denied taking the food, but that did nothing to make Mark less angry. He threatened both of us and said that if we ever stole his shit again, he would kill us. I had never seen him so mad before. I knew that it had to have been Dale who stole the food, cause I knew that I hadn't eaten it. I always made sure to eat all of my Taco Bell at once to avoid mistakes like that happening, but I decided not to snitch after seeing how angry Mark was. I figured that everyone would forget about it and things could go on like they did before, but everything went sour after that day. The 3 of us continued to live together, but we weren't as good friends as we were before. Things became awkward and tense. Then one night, I sat in the living room, eating Taco Bell and watching TV. The 3 of us used to do it together most nights, but now, the other 2 usually stayed in their rooms. I typically ended up just hanging out by myself. Eventually, I went to my room to go to sleep. Then I was suddenly awoken by loud noises and screaming. I was startled and quickly got up to see what was wrong. It was pitch black in the house. As I walked out of my room, I realized that it was Mark yelling from the kitchen, so I fumbled my way through the living room to see what was going on. When I got into the kitchen, I saw Mark strangling Dale while he accused him of stealing his Taco Bell once again.
I'll kill you, you lying thief! I know you took it!
I quickly pulled Mark off of Dale and broke up the fight. They still kept screaming at each other even after I pulled them apart.
What's the matter with you two? That psycho was trying to kill me. You saw him? I told you that I would kill you if you touched my meat again. I didn't take your goddamn Taco Bell.
Finally, they stopped yelling. Mark went outside for a smoke, while Dell headed into the living room. I was scared to go back to bed, as I didn't know if Mark would attack Dell again as soon as I left. I couldn't believe how upset he was getting over Taco Bell. I decided to go outside and try to calm Mark down. He still wasn't in a good headspace when I got out there though. He immediately started cussing me out.
I know that old piece of shit keeps stealing my food. He does it in the middle of the night. I caught him in there red-handed.
I kept trying to talk him down, but it wouldn't work. He just kept getting more and more angry.
He's not gonna get away with this. I won't let him. That old piece of shit. Mark, are you even listening to me?
Then he suddenly stopped pacing and looked at me. Then, out of nowhere, he stormed back inside and slammed the sliding glass door behind him, locking me outside.
Mark, what the hell are you doing?
I watched through the door in horror as Mark went into the kitchen and grabbed the knife. Then he held it up and looked back at me with a psychotic smile. I banged on the door and kept begging him to stop, but he wouldn't listen to me. I watched as he walked into the living room where Dell was. I couldn't see what was going on, but I knew what was about to happen. I was forced to stand there and listen, helpless, while I heard the most guttural screams and sounds coming from inside. I called the cops shortly after, but they couldn't get there in time. By the time they arrived and got the door open, Dale was found dead at the scene. Mark was standing over him, holding the knife. He was arrested immediately. I've been traumatized by Taco Bell ever since that night. I still can't imagine how Mark could have gone so insane over food. Who knows what he would have done to me next if the cops hadn't taken him away. This story was inspired by a horrific incident regarding a Michigan man who was accused of taking out his roommate earlier this year. After a verbal argument over a Taco Bell meal allegedly turned physical, Mark Newsom, 54, was charged in the fatal act of taking out his roommate. The victim was identified as 72-year-old Dale Mitchell. It was reported that the alleged argument began over a Taco Bell food order. He is being held without bond at the Macomb County Jail. A third roommate named Larry Melton commented on the aftermath saying, "Oh God, it scared the hell out of me at the time. It really did. There was blood all over the upstairs. To think a fight over food would escalate into murder. It's inconceivable. I trusted Mark as my friend. I could never believe he would have done something like that. It would have been a lot easier to just walk away."